Hi everyone, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here with another PB&J card class. This is actually video number 10 out of 10 in our Permission to Play video series. So I'm so glad you're joining us today. And I just had to do it. I had to use the posted stamp and die set with some new and some fan favorite stamps, even some dies for today's sketch. So here is a little peek at the cards that we will be creating today. And just again, a reminder of what the whole idea of this permission to play is. Basically, permission to just enjoy your hobby, not to overthink things. I need this reminder myself that it's okay to make simple cards. It's okay to do the same sketch or layout over and over, even if it's the posted one that I keep doing over and over. It's okay to mix old and new products. I love that about Penny Black. It never goes out of style. You can be creative and not productive. So you can do parts and sections at a time and not finish a card until later on or maybe never. And not compare your cards to others. Your recipients don't compare your cards to anyone else's. 3 hacks for simple cards that you're proud of though. For me, using embossing folders, quality images, and strong colors. So we'll be doing that with this sketch today. This is featuring Penny Black's posted stamp and cutout die that I have used many times. So I'm giving myself permission to keep using it because it still brings me joy. I still love getting it out, mixing and matching it with some new stamps, some old stamps, and even some dies. So I've prepped ahead of time in my envelope system. I'll link that video down below in case you've missed it. Now I'm going to pull out that posted piece. I've already prepped it onto Canson 140-pound watercolor paper, cold press, and I'm stamping my image using Ranger Archival ink in the color of watering can. I have masked off the edges of that postage stamp. And so my little critter is going to be just riding along inside of the postage stamp. So every time you bring a new image, something from your stash to this sketch, it just looks different when it's inside of the postage stamp, and I love that. So I went ahead and did all my stamping at once. I've got an old stamp, a new stamp, and some die cuts from Flower Family. Now just a reminder of all these 10 videos and all 10 sketches, we have an ebook available that you can download. And if you'd like to do that, I'll link it for you down below. I thank you so much for showing your support of these video series through the purchase of that ebook. Now I'm going to go ahead and paint my images and my die cuts that I've already stamped. So working assembly line style, just like I've done in the other videos. Now I can begin with my painting. And so if I've stamped all of these in advance, then I can just put my stamping things away and leave out my paints and those images, these little postage pieces that are already stamped. And it's very inviting for me then when that's all sitting up on my desk to just walk by, and if I only have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an evening, an hour, I am much more likely to sit down and be creative when I have that ready to go. I work in a very small space. I've mentioned this before. It's like a closet. And so I do need to work in stages if I'm going to be able to make cards more just more easily. And so I like to do this. I like to do one section, finish it, and leave it out for the next step. And so if I have picked out my sketch, maybe I just leave sitting out my die cuts and my paper. So the next time I can walk by or I have a moment to craft, I can just jump right into doing the die cutting. And then when I finish that, I'll put that away and maybe I'll just pick out my stamps and leave those sitting out. And then the next time I can, like I said before, there's the stamps, everything's cut and ready to go. I'll just sit down and stamp a while. So I just really enjoy approaching it in that way. I have found the busier I am, or when I just have low motivation to start things, I usually enjoy them once I get going, but sometimes it's hard to start. That really helps me. That's why I think that sketches can be really useful. And again, giving yourself permission to just play, to not overthink it, just enjoy your hobby. Grab what you love. For me, that's always Penny Black, and I love that it's never out of style. And so I can just grab new, old, new products, kind of keep me enthused, get me really excited to get in there and get stamping. But like I said, this stamp, this is from the Time to Celebrate transparent set. This is a fan favorite that Penny Black has made available again that you can purchase if you missed out on the first time. It's awesome and it looks amazing and it looks totally different when you put it inside of this posted sort of sketch and stamp and cutout. So what I did is I painted my sky and I'm painting my ground, just a very loose look of a scene. So sky, grass, as he's riding his bike along. Now if you want more detailed information about my painting and how I like to approach painting and sort of my how-to or frequently asked questions with painting, I'll link to a video with that down below. So if you still have questions after you've watched that, be sure to check that out. That probably will answer any questions you might have. I'm using Distress Ink Reinkers used as watercolors, just as I've done in the other videos. Keeping things just very simple and easy. Again, with a quality image, you really don't need to do lots of shading or intricate coloring. You can, and it's really fun if that's what you love, but both ways will look nice because the illustration itself is a really fantastic illustration. And I find sometimes sort of the looser look with even leaving a little bit of white even can give it sort of a storybook quality. That's another reason that I like to stamp with that watering can colored ink is that it's just not quite as black, and so it just for me looks a little bit more like hand painted storybook rather than like dark black outline coloring book look. Hope that makes sense. So fun to paint all these different packages that he has here on his bike. I'm just picking up that Distress Ink Reinker, putting it down. I put down a light color first and then I'm just going in and darkening that up. I can lift color if I pat my brush off on my paper towel and it's fairly dry. I can sort of lift or lighten color like I'm doing there. I do try to usually start light though, and I can always darken it up. Keeping things nice and sketchy there, not going for perfect. And then just kind of lifting that color, adding a little more blue. And then I'm going to dry that, so as I keep moving up, that the parts of the image that are adjacent to each other don't start to bleed and blend. So if it's dry, you're not going to bleed and blend together, but if they're both wet, and I had a little bit of that happen with that yellow package to the green package, they started to mix together. So I went ahead and dried that before and even working on a different section here before I move up in the image. So if you see me jumping around in an image, it's usually to avoid having two wet areas, two wet different colors adjacent to each other, or I just am very random and think of painting one part and then jumping around. So, but it's usually to avoid that color mixing. So we'll get this awesome cake here. And the candles. Now I've asked sometimes what kind of brush I'm using. I'm using a silver black velvet round number 8 paintbrush. And a number 8 paintbrush is not super tiny, but I find with this paintbrush, when I dab it off on my paper towel, if I kind of give it a twist, as I'm doing that in lift, I'm making that point come together at the top. And you can paint some really detailed things using that number 8 paintbrush. You don't have to have this paintbrush by any means, but just I have asked that sometimes. Do you just use that same size? I pretty much use it for everything. It's just easier. But if you kind of give it a twist on the paper towel as you pat it, just a little bit, it will make that tip just a little bit sharper. If that, not sharper, but seems sharper. And again, all the colors I'm using, all the inks, Everything is listed down in the YouTube description box below, along with the penny black embossing folder, stamps, and dies. Those are all listed and linked for you down in that YouTube description box below as well. And now I'm going to paint this flower family die. Again, I've used this on a lot of cards in this video series, but I love this die set. You have different size flowers in the same die set. They are elegant but whimsical enough that you can paint them whatever color you want. Here I'm just doing some pinks and some purples, lifting some color, and die cuts are a great place to practice your watercoloring. They're much easier to do, they're faster to do for me than line images. So it's just a whole different feeling, and if you finish it and you're not quite happy with it, let it dry and just put a little bit of distress ink with an ink blending tool and a foam pad on top of your painting. It will hide any like blotchy areas too. So I'm trying to go for darker towards the center. And a little variation in color. And you can see I'm going kind of clearing it off and starting again, just playing. I want these two flowers to look similar but not exactly alike. So I'm just playing around with that. And again, this posted sketch using the posted stamp and cutout die, where you basically make your own little postage stamp. You can also use it with your dies on top. And so I wanted to show you that with these flowers, that don't just feel like you're limited to stamping inside of that. Remember what I said about putting some distress ink? I've grabbed a fingertip dauber and my distress inks, and I am just putting that towards the center, making it even darker. They are dry, and just putting those picked raspberry and seedless preserves toward the center. Covered any imperfections in my watercoloring, and it just got it as dark as I wanted it to be. Then I'll just paint the stems here. And you can see that those colors of those flowers look related, but not exactly the same. Now I'll work on the background for those flowers. So I've grabbed this from my little envelope that I've prepped in advance. And for this stamp, the posted stamp, I stamped that on the same Canson 140-pound cold pressed watercolor paper, and I used shadow gray archival ink to stamp that. So it's that postage look is there, but it's not over the top. I'm putting down some Evergreen Bough and some Forest Moss Distress Ink Reinker just to get this background. I love those two colors together. If you've watched any of my videos, you've seen me use them together a lot. And since my flowers were watercolored, even though they're die cuts, I also wanted this background to have that watercolor look. Here I'm just putting down some gathered twigs. There's a bit of water in my brush when I pick it up from the palette. That's why it's not too dark. So next I'm going to take those, again working assembly line style, and add a little bit of detail. So I've masked off using post-it notes around the perimeter. Here I'm just putting a little bit of distress ink using an ink blending tool and a foam pad. Also a little Toffee Crunch Memento ink. That just makes it look a little bit more distressed to me. And then I'm going to use from that posted stamp set. It's just a miniature 3x4 inch stamp set, but man, I've used it a lot. I'm going to use some tone on tone stamping here, almost tone on tone. I'm using that Memento Toffee Crunch to stamp just some postage marks onto that, keeping things masked. I love adding this light stamping at the end. I feel like it just takes it to the next level. I start light and then do it multiple times. So that was a sky blue archival ink, and I stamped it twice, so it's really, really light. And then this first stamp for first class mail, that is also in the posted stamp set, that miniature 3x4 inch set. Again, everything's listed and linked for you down below. And I'm going to stamp that with the shadow gray and just repeat it a few times, going from light and darkening it up rather than starting with too dark of a color. I'd rather just start light and stamp it a couple of times. I'll remove my post-it notes and that element is complete. Then this is my embossed background. It was already ready to go in my envelope. Again, a nice, great penny black embossing folder that can be used with lots of different designs, so you don't have to plan that ahead. I'm just putting some distress ink on top. So I die cut it from a lighter, not die cut it, embossed it on a lighter color so I could ink on top and just get those raised areas highlighted a little bit. And all I'm doing is putting that on there with some foam adhesive. And I just love this card. I think it is so fun. What a great birthday card. Here is a new stamp from Penny Black. So I'm mixing some older stamps, some new stamps, but following the same sketch. And then this is a new embossing folder, diagonals, and there are those die cut flowers on my postage. So I hope you enjoyed another look, having some fun, permission to play with the posted stamp and cutout again for this sketch. And I hope you've enjoyed this series. 10 videos, 10 sketches, an ebook if you'd like to download it is linked below. Thank you everyone for your such kind and encouraging comments. They mean so much to me. I just can't tell you that enough. I appreciate you so much. If you enjoyed this video and this series, be sure that you're subscribed, give it a thumbs up, and follow Penny Black on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram, our website and blog for continued inspiration. Happy stamping!